Hi, I'm Martin O'Connor. I'm the writer and performer of Through the Shortbread Tin, and I'm joined today by Pennie, and today we're going to talk all stuff Scots language. What shall we talk about?
Well, what is Scots to you?
We'll just start there. Was that you doing it?
I was actually me beginning. I was actually beginning the video there. So what is Scots to you?
What is Scots to me?
It's a difficult question, isn't it?
Well, it is difficult because it's inherent, right?
Is it?
And it's kind of hidden, and it's obviously something that's tied up with your upbringing and your childhood and your family, and then the context you're living and working in. But it's complicated.
It is.
Why is it so complicated?
There's, for me at least, a hybridity when it comes to identity, because as you say, there's how you grew up, and then there's that space where you leave your house and you have to interact with people who speak differently, think differently, have different opinions, and depending on how you were raised, it can either confirm your thoughts about Scots or just blow it wide open.
And that was my experience, because growing up in Glasgow and speaking the way that I was speaking, I suddenly went to college, and I knew then, day one, I knew it. I had to change the way that I spoke in order to be understood, or in order to be taken seriously, was probably what I was really feeling. I had voice lessons to change the way that I spoke, and it worked because they believed back then that you had to not have an accent if you were going to do other accents. So if I was going to learn to be an actor, I needed to have some sort of like clean slate.
Oh, the one neutral
accent.
That's it. But see the accent that they were teaching you to do, that's an accent.
Exactly.
Even received pronunciation is an accent.
Yeah.
But there's this idea, I think, that there's a neutral, a linguistic neutral, an accent neutral, and then everything else is supposed to be going towards that. And when it comes to Scots, that's even more annoying because it's very easy to shame people and make them speak differently. And it doesn't erase that part of you, but it sits there and it's still there, but you miss it.
Mm-hmm.
And then whenever you try and access that in your work or in your life, it feels authentic sometimes. Mm-hmm. But then, again, that hybridity, you feel inauthentic because it feels like you're putting it on because you try and ignore it.
Yeah, that's it. That's really interesting because when I started doing poetry and spoken word and making my own theatre and writing my own theatre projects, I knew I wanted to do something in what was my own language, but whatever that was from my childhood, and then just feeling completely inauthentic about it because I'd changed so much, and then you're trying to reclaim this thing or recreate it in some way, and it just feels like you're making it up.
That's it.
Or you're at it. Do you feel like that as well?
Honestly, and I'm tell all the time that I'm at it, which feels
you're at it.
they're like, oh, you're at it. You didn't speak like that. But the thing is, like, when I go home and speak to my mum, it feels natural, it feels normal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that's the language I was mothered in. But then you come out the house and it's like, oh, this feels performative, because I think there's been a complete 180 when it comes to Scots, where everyone's gone, oh, we have a legal responsibility to include Scots, to include Gaelic, to show that we're not, perpetuating this attempted eradication. And then you run the risk of being tokenised, because then you run the risk of being the only, Scots speaker that code switches out of it.
No.
So in the meetings, you can conduct yourself properly.
No.
But then when it comes to writing something or performing something, we can switch into it.
But do you not feel like you're saying performative? Do you not think it is helpful? Like I've found it helpful. So the poetry and the art for me has been the outlet for me to be able to do the Scots. So calling it performative actually does work if you're in that opportunity to perform in the language.
Because people will see your work and think, oh, I can write in Scots, I can use Scots. Yeah. And I just wish that we could take it into the meetings before the performance. Because I'm very privileged in the sense that I get to write and perform my own work. So I get to choose when I use Scots and when I don't. But a lot of people are having to perform Scots that isn't theirs. Because obviously there's no standard. Mm-hmm. And if we were to say, all right, Jimmy makes a standard, where's he from? Is his language going to look like mine?
Exactly.
So it's difficult. It's really difficult. And then also a lot of people that are using Scots professionally have been educated out of it, have been told that it's not the right way to speak. And in that sense, there's an unlearning and a relearning that has to take place.
That's it. So now my Scots is a completely different version of what it would have been had I just kind of stayed where I stayed and lived where I lived and just kept speaking that way. But really interesting you say that about like even performing being felt like you have to perform in a certain type of Scots in the right way as well. Yeah, totally get that. So all the work that I've done, I've tried, I've written things, but as soon as I'm learning my lines, as soon as it's out of my mouth, I'm like, would I say it like that? Would
Exactly.
I say that? And if I don't say it like that, then it goes. Or
Really?
I cut it, and it just gets even simpler, do you know what I mean? Because I just wouldn't say, if I don't say it like that, then I wouldn't.
Because I do a wee bit of linguistic magpiery, and I go around all the different dialects of Scots that I didn't use growing up, and I'll take fun words because you would do that with English.
Well, of course, you do any language.
But you would never do that with Scots. It has to be.
So can I do that, please?
Well,
Have I got permission to do that?
That's the thing is, I'm never even going to claim to be an expert in Scots, but I am a massive nerd, and I've noticed that happening in other languages, but in Scots, because it's fragmented, it's dialectal in nature, it's very regional, people get raging at you. Like people from Glasgow will say, oh, we didn't say Ken in Glasgow. But then you look historically, and it's there. Post World War II, it's in Glasgow. So at some point, Glasgow decided we don't use Ken, and then that's just an absolute riddy if you use it. But I'm a big fan of you can only ever augment your language.
Of course.
And I think that just if you like a word, use it. If you don't, don't.
Yeah. No, I did struggle with that. I did struggle because confession time.
What's that?
We're in confession. I honestly didn't know about Scots as a language.
That's okay.
As a name, as a thing, until about 10, 12 years ago. And I even had started doing this kind of work and doing this kind of poetry, but I wasn't calling it Scots. I had no idea that it was Scots. I was calling it slang. I was calling it vernacular. I was using these words that I would never use, and when I see people using these words, I would get a wee bit annoyed at it, but I was using that because that was the only way I knew to
That's
describe
okay, because there was a whole attempt at eradication. You're not supposed to know. You are not supposed to know what Scots is, what it sounds like, how we use it, the grammatical structures, the word, how you conjugate a verb. You're not supposed to know any of that. And the fact that you do is great, but it's not to be expected. That's why whenever I see somebody, I don't view the word ignorance. I don't think that's an inherently bad thing. I don't use it as a pejorative. I think ignorance is just the first step of the learning journey. Yeah,
and it's a consequence of the experience that you've had in the life that's been given to you, right?
Because some people, I was brought up in a house where I come back and say, oh, Mum, you're teaching me slang. She said, that's no slang. That's no slang, hen. That's a good Scots word.
That's your heritage. That's your life.
That's a good Scots word. You've got good Scots tongue in your head. So I grew up with the privilege of intergenerational knowledge, and I had that. I didn't have that generational gap. A lot of people didn't, and that's not their fault. So if people are open to changing and learning and growing when it comes to Scots, I love that.
So did you do that then? Was your Scots pretty, or did you have these moments like I had when you kind of changed or felt like it wasn't yours or whatever? Or have you had a pretty kind of, maybe not smooth is the right word, but...
Smoothish. I was in a wee bubble in the house where everything was that's just how it was. There's words that I don't, the first word I go to is the Scots version. But when I left the house and went to the school, it was a massive shock to me that, first of all, not everybody spoke like that, but second of all, not everybody wanted to speak like that. Because in my head I was like, oh, you don't know this word? I'll teach you, you'll love it. And then you're looking at somebody and they think, you're stupid. You don't sound like us, you don't fit in. And so for me, it was the first time where I thought, oh God, my house isn't the world. In a bad way. But then I'd go home and it would all come flooding back. So it was a weird sort of, and you're learning at school, proper grammar, proper words, proper pronunciation, and it seeps in. And that's when it starts being the two sides of you. Because some people just use Scots all the time. And I love that, and I respect that. But there's some people who, when I went to uni, people did not appreciate that the way that I spoke was valid or correct. It was that it was deviating from this standard. Which is difficult, because then you're in a lecture and you want to seem smart, you want to seem educated and cultured, so you change yourself and then you hate yourself. And I think that people talk a lot about, have you ever heard of the Glasgow uni accent?
Yes.
Right. They judge these people for using an accent, but for a lot of them, that's a survival mechanism that they develop in order to fit in.
So, but it's also their world
that
you're in, and you're influenced by all these things, and that's also all right. And I do a lot of work about, I do this thing where I ask people to tell me the story of their voice, maybe I could ask you that. But tell me the story of your voice, and a lot of people talk about, you know, it could be a class thing, but it's also just an influence thing, a geographical thing. I lived here, but I moved here. I met these people. I went to uni here. So it's a natural thing as well. You know, it shouldn't be something to be ashamed of. If you have to survive, if you code switch, if you do all that, that's great as well. But if that's just your natural kind of influences that you've had, that's your voice, right? And that's all right.
I'm a very big believer that a lot of things we judge about people are things that we were taught to judge. They're not things that are just inherently bad. So even things like vocal fry, you know, people judge like a Valley Girl accent. It's like, oh my God, like that. There's nothing wrong with that.
Is the Scots equivalent of a vocal fry, do you think?
A vocal fry up my bit.
And that's our tagline right there.
But that's only, we only really judge that in women. Because Morgan Freeman, you know, he's got a really deep, you know what I mean? We'd only judge
he's got
that.
a deep voice.
But it's
you know,
gravelly, and a man it's gravelly, and a woman it's grating.
Yes.
You know, or, you know, dropping your T's, glottal stop. That's seen as lazy. I don't understand. There's hundreds of languages that use a glottal stop, you know, as a part of their language. It irks me. A lot of things about language irk me because there's a difference between neutral linguistic features and man-made structural prejudice. And when they intersect, you get a lot of, can I say fannies?
You have done now.
There's a sort of viscerality to Scots. There's an embodiment, actually. You've got the sort of voiceless velar fricket of the like, I love that. I think that's beautiful. But it gets sort of parodied and mocked in a way that I don't like. And I'm always very careful about projects I do that doesn't sort of tokenise Scots or make it. Is that something that you've really tried to do in your work?
I think, I sometimes go there and I write a thing or do a thing, and then I pull back. So you were saying you were adding a lot. I suppose I kind of pull back a lot. I kind of try and work with a really simple palette of words, you know, to see what I can do with that. Like, how can that tell the story? You know, when you're kind of, it's not, I don't feel that Scots as a language isn't a limiting language or limited at all, because as you've already explained, it's completely rich and diverse and brilliant. But again, I think just like growing up, having this voice that I've had, and no wanting to kind of deviate for that sometimes because you feel like you've got to do your own version of it. Do you know what I mean? So I'm always kind of trying to stay within the confines of that thing.
People think Scots needs to be learned at your nanny's knee, and anything else is inauthentic. It's put on, it's kid on, it's we're just here for the banter. You know, that for me is difficult because that does limit people, but it's a limitation that I understand. Like, a lot of the preconceived notions of Scots are coming from this generational gap, which evolved out of people being beaten in school for speaking Scots. If your parents had that experience, you're going to think Scots is bad. A lot of the hatred for Scots is just love pointed in the wrong direction. Because you don't want your wains to go to school and get bullied. You don't want your wains to not be able to get a job. So you love them and you try and stop them from doing something wrong. But it isn't wrong.
And that's the same. So I've done lots of research on this between Scots, Gaelic and BSL was one thing that I was doing here at NTS actually. And it's the same story. It's exactly the same. Obviously we know people were beaten. There was the Education Act that meant that Gaelic wasn't spoken in the school either. And, you know, lots and lots of stories of young deaf people trying to express themselves with their hands and, you know, having been told to sit on their hands, which is just the equivalent, isn't it, of being told not to say that. So I actually find there's a bit of strength in that, strength in numbers, talking to people from other cultures about their own marginalised or minority languages, and actually just hearing the same stories and the same feelings does give me a wee bit of, I mean, I know it's not an ideal kind of history that we have, but I do find a wee bit of strength in the numbers of that we are the same as every other culture, really.
It's nice to see it as being valid. Because it's very easy to eradicate a language. It only takes a couple of generations. It's a very, very well-rehearsed, well-practiced, you know, methodology. And when you see that pattern in other places out with Scotland, you recognise it within Scotland. And I think that you're right in saying it's strength in numbers, but it's also there's a nice feeling in feeling like the pain that you feel or the weird experiences that you're having, you're no special. this is something that's no about you. It's no about Scots as a language being inherently bad.
Yeah.
It's just this attitude of cultural homogenisation.
Yeah. And that's what I would like to also just remind people of all the time, that this isn't unique to Scotland. No. This isn't just only this one language, or maybe even speaking about Gaelic as well, that's happened to. Do you know that it's in this situation because it is itself rubbish? We need to talk about the things that have happened to language over time.
And what we can do to help undo it. Because the more that we platform minoritised languages, I always say minoritised because calling them minority makes it sound like one day everybody just woke up and decided to stop speaking Scots or Gaelic. This was an active thing. And the more we understand how it happened, the more we can understand how to undo it. And then help other language communities to do the same. Because we've got a huge privilege of the internet and social media. And it's a great knowledge bank. And it's been instrumental in the sort of Scots Renaissance that we're seeing in a minute.
Do you think we're in a Scots Renaissance?
Yes. I mean, it never really went away.
That's what I was going to say. Is it just been like,
It's more visible now, certainly, but people have been saying that Scots is dying for millennia. And the thing is, it's outlived everyone that said that thus far. So all we have to do is wait. Do you know what I mean?
Keep going.
That's it. But Scots is thriving. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't need support. We don't want to get lulled into a false sense of security and think, just because the census shows the numbers are going up or they're staying consistent, we can take the foot off the gas.
Yeah. But don't you think numbers might be going up? I think this happened with Gaelic as well, is that, again, maybe people didn't know that they were speaking Scots. Again, a wee bit more kind of awareness about that, of saying, well, actually, that word you just said there, or that way that you're just speaking there, that's a Scots word or Scots language. And so I think having given people the permission to say in a census or something like that, well, this is Scots.
The amount of people that tell me, I didn't use Scots. Nobody uses Scots in Scotland. And I'm like, okay. Or I didn't speak Scots, I speak Glaswegian, I speak Dundonian, I speak Doric. It's like all these things that people have been, I don't know why, if it's, maybe that again, it's that localisation, where they feel very protective over this one specific aspect of the Scots language. But I don't see any need for a standardisation, because I feel like that would erase all of the really rich diversity within the language.
Well, it does, because you can see it in Gaelic. The more standardisation, the more Gaelic medium education there is. People have to then just decide what that word for that one thing is. When colours, for example, feelings, seasons, nature, all of that has so many more words to describe one thing, but you just have to decide on that one word for that one thing.
It's such a difficult balance, because who do you prioritise in that situation? The learner for simplicity or the speaker for authenticity? And it's a horrific balance. But what I love about things like the Dictionary of the Scots Languages, if you look up a word, it'll give you umpteen different definition, umpteen different spellings, pronunciations, usages, and alternatives. And I think, people are very, very fear of synonyms in Scots. I've noticed that. They're very fear of synonyms. Like, I'll say, this is a word that means this, and I'll get hundreds of people in the comments going, no, it's this word, you're wrong. And it's like, I fear there may be room for both. Like, do you know what I mean? We can have two words. You don't even have to use that one. You just can't tell me I'm wrong for using it. And I think perfection is the enemy of good when it comes to Scots. Absolutely. Because there's so many people, because they think, for example, right, I'd always say the now. When I don't say the now, people get really annoyed. And I'm like, well, I didn't grow up saying the now. I grew up saying the now. Yep. And I don't think that's inauthentic. Or if you say water instead of water one time, people think, she's not a real Scot. I've caught her out. Like,
one time.
One time. It was one time, guys. But you know what I mean? It's like, or do you know what I mean? Not, do you ken what I mean? But there's so many instances where saying ken would have got you in trouble, beaten, for other people, that when they say no, you don't actually ken why they're no saying ken. But also in poetry, people get really annoyed, because I always have a rhyme. Like, for me, my poetry always rhymes. Other people can do it differently. I don't judge. I do, but not out loud. Do you know what I mean?
I rhyme sometimes.
as you should. Work on that. But when I end it in, like, say for example, it's go and I rhyme it with no, and people are like, oh, that should be Ken. I'm like, no, it should be no.
I know. I've got that in this show. I've got going, and I think I've got doing, and it's no dayin. It's actually dayin my head in that rhyme, so I'm going to have to fix it because I can't have that.
But it's difficult because, like, you know, Robert Burns, the one accepted canonical instance of Scots that everyone acknowledges as the one true the one true Scotsman. He didn't always use Scots or English. He wrote in a mixture of both.
And didn't he? You will know better than me. Maybe when he published his first book, you know, it wasn't
Dialect.
said in Scots, right? What did he call it?
It's dialect, Scottish dialect.
Yeah.
Which, do you know what? I've got a lot of thoughts about Burns, but I will say he gets a lot of Scots speakers a lot of work at a certain time of year. Calendar's empty and then the 21st everybody's on you. But for that, I think also that's quite damaging because it keeps Scots, if we epitomise Burns as the sort of the godfather of Scots, it keeps it in amber, keeps it on a shelf, keeps it only accessible at certain times of the year. And it also alienates a lot of young Scots speakers from approaching Scots in their literature and what they write because they see Ayrshire, you know, old Scots by a man, by a misogynist, and they don't see themselves in that. So they think, oh, I'm from Dundee, I didn't speak like that, maybe I didn't speak Scots. And it's like, but you do, just not his Scots. Like, it's, and that's not me saying I want to get rid of Burns publicly, but it's me saying that I think we should just augment the material that Waynes are getting taught in the school because there's so many Scots writers, playwrights, you know, poets, novelists, singers, creatives working and practicing Scots every single day. And I think if we show Waynes what it looks like, they'll engage with it.
Well, I think that kind of is happening. So I can see it in my own, you know, I've got two young kids and I can see it. They get so much more Scots than, and it's called Scots, and they've got the translations of the books, you know, all the Roald Dahl books, or the Julia Donaldsons or whatever. They learn Scots at time of Burns, you know, and all of that. So it's kind of there. It's kind of completely different to the way that I was brought up. A completely different understanding of it. I
agree with that, but also I think it's still a bit of a postcode lottery.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of schools that rely upon that one teacher.
Aye, who knows it?
I mean, I spoke to a school where they had grandmothers from the community come in and teach Scots, and that's great if you've got grannies, but they're no government subsidised grannies, so they're not getting paid.
Yep.
It's unpaid labour, and it's entirely dependent on these, you know, people volunteering their time and services, which a lot of people don't have the luxury to do. So I think it's something that we very much need to ensure is happening across Scotland, because, you know, all schools are doing French and they're doing Spanish, and I, from a very early age, got standardised teaching of French, Spanish, you know, the 1+2 languages scheme that's happening in schools. That's great. And it should also include, again, it's not this replacement, it's this augmentation of adding, not taking away, if that makes sense.
Totally. What does the future look like?
For Scots? I'm really excited. I genuinely am really excited because when I'm really, really privileged to be able to go into a lot of schools, talk to a lot of Waynes, and judge their writing competitions, read their essays. They love it. Aye. And I don't know if we're post-cringe. I don't know if this generation are just not getting told the same thing, but it's so lovely to see Waynes. I don't want to even say it unashamedly because there's nothing to be ashamed of, but they're just so passionate about Scots, and they're just so curious. I think there's a real curiosity, and I think that's having a knock-on effect, because education isn't just about the youth. Because when I go into, you know, care homes, or I go in and talk to members of the, you know, local community that are, you know, later on in life, elderly, they're also learning things. They're also learning that they shouldn't have been beaten in the school, that they are vindicated for the way that they spoke, that the way they communicate is valid, and that's a vital part of education that I think goes unthought of sometimes, is the fact that people never stop learning. Yeah. You know, lifelong learning.
But people think that, you do, once you stop being a kid. And there's no creativity for an adult as well.
That's it.
But you just said something really interesting.
For once.
You said post-cringe.
Yes.
What's post-cringe? Are we living in a post-cringe
I hope
society?
I genuinely hope that my generation's, I know everyone probably thinks that, but I hope my generation's the last one with the Scottish cringe. Because...
What we're going to talk about if we don't have the Scottish cringe?
That literally what we complain about if we don't talk about the Scottish cringe. But I see a lot of passion and a lot of work. And it's not that the passion, the work wasn't there, but now I think it's being given the platform. And I think things like the Scottish Languages Bill, you know, the work that, you know, campaigners have been doing since before I was even thought of, you know, things like that. I think it's coming to fruition, and I think people are finally being recognised for the work they've been doing for decades, and I think that's hopefully something we can build on. I don't think we're there. I think we're getting there. We're on the way. We bought the ticket.
Great. Bought a ticket for my show?
You're doing a show?
Tickets are on sale.
You never said. So, what do you think the future of Scots holds? It's a big question.
It is a big question. I think even just thinking in the theatre world, in the arts world, I've definitely seen so much more passion about Scots language, so much more attention, so much more awareness than I ever had, even within the last 10 years. So I work a lot with young people, young writers, young theatre makers, young poets. I've sat on panels for applications, and there's so many people that want to write in Scots, about Scotland. So that I think there's been a real shift in that, because when I was emerging or starting in theatre, that wasn't a priority at all. I felt like that wasn't around. But then there wasn't many people that were speaking like the way that I was speaking, you know, to begin with. So I think there's been a big shift, and I think young people, emerging writers, emerging artists, see it as a valid art form and want to. Lots of young people say to me, why wasn't I taught that? They say the same in Gaelic as well. They say, oh, you're a Gaelic learner. Oh, I was never taught Gaelic. What's that? I'd be interested in doing that. So yeah, I'm kind of positive about it. I think working with these young people, I can see the future maybe is bright, because I feel like they have the awareness already. And because they have the awareness, then they can take that leap into whatever it takes them. Hybrids, you know, new versions of Scots, new Scots languages, whatever, you know. I'm excited to see what that could become.
I would love to see Scots not being a genre in fiction and writing, and I'd love it, because right now you've got science fiction, poetry, cookbooks, everything all put in the one wee Scots corner. I'd love it if Scots was just, oh, that's just a book happens to be in Scots, and you know, I would love to see us not need to put a glossary. Yeah, because you would need that for any other language.
Or subtitles.
Well, that's the thing is, I love subtitles if everything else is subtitled.
Yeah.
But the way a lot of media treats Scots and Scottish people, especially if it's not media made within Scotland, is this is a joke. This is a laugh at our expense. And Scots is so funny. And humour has protected Scots for so long. And you know, it's been one of the only platforms where Scots can be seen, you know, Still Game, all these amazing, beautiful, heartwarming comedy. I don't think Scots is inherently funny, any more so than any other language. I think that it's put in that box because people want to make Scots the butt of the joke.
I was at the Scots Language Awards recently, and that was one of the speakers did say, we love the Scots Language Awards, we love celebrating the Scots language, we love having this event to bring everyone together, but it'd be really nice if there wasn't a kind of dedicated Scots Language Award, that we could have awards for all these categories without it being through the medium of the Scots language.
Yeah, I think the more we can see Scots, use Scots, make Scots, learn Scots, the less Scots will be a thing, and it'll just be how it is.
And how we speak.
That's it.
That's it.
Solved it.
Done it. Well done.
Well
Thanks.
done. Fixed it. That's a wrap.